When building a Rupture team, Devyat Sinclair is less than desirable. While he's not a terrible unit, frankly, far from it, taking Devyat Sinclair is the most extreme example of self-sabotage within the entirety of Limbus Company. A unit so bad that you should never, ever use them. At least, that's the common perception of him. A unit that completely dismantles the archetype, and a victim of Project Moon's biggest mistake. But how did we get here? Our story begins back in Season 2, a much simpler time where identities as we know them were just getting their footing. Yet one archetype hit the ground running. Every new piece of playable content back then shared one thing in common: Rupture, Rupture, and Rupture. It was everywhere. But there was just one problem to these identities. Because the game is so young, Project Moon didn't really know what they were doing. Every identity focused on everything, but weren't quite good at anything. So most of these units, while yes, they had Rupture in their kit, weren't really Rupture units. Units that focused entirely on Rupture weren't that great either. This is because Rupture is a game design nightmare. It's true damage, that's all it does. If true damage got out of control, boom, there goes every form of challenging content in the game. To prevent this, these Rupture units were intentionally made weak. Their rolls were terrible. Of course they were. Their archetype is true damage. Their Rupture application was poor. Of course it was. Even charge has to reset to 0. These units were given more coins than count, and their potency application was scarce. Of course it was. True damage shouldn't stack easily, so these units were given very little potency application. This was great. With this design philosophy, Rupture could never get out of control. But, Rupture wasn't good at anything. Rupture teams had too little counts. The status effect could never get off the ground. Their potency application took 5 turns to get above 30. And worst of all, the boss killing status effect sucked at killing bosses. Rupture was in a terrible position. So how did Project Moon go about fixing this? They had an ingenious idea. If Rupture was terrible at killing bosses, let's give Rupture a death mark. On June 29th, Project Moon released Talisman Sinclair, and like with every other Rupture 2-star, his kit fucking blowed. Yet what came with him was the most damning status effect that Limbus Company has ever seen: the Rupturing Talisman. It's a simple status effect. On hit, apply 1 Rupture potency, and when hit, gain 1 Rupture potency. While this wasn't terribly strong, Talisman Sinclair could transfer 5 of this to a target. All of a sudden, Rupture went from a joke to the strongest archetype in the game. For the time being, Talisman was the healthiest way to bring Rupture back into the meta. It took what was previously the limiting factor of Rupture teams and turned it on its head. High coin count became more valuable than potency application. Was it overpowered? Moving on. But there were some downsides. Talisman Sinclair is the worst unit on your team. Outside of setting up Talisman, he doesn't really do much. And you had to restart a lot. A lot. You spent more time restarting than fighting the boss. It was so bad. This is why if you look at any YouTuber's tier list, they didn't put Rupture that high. It's too RNG dependent. And I sincerely think that Talisman Sinclair as a unit is so perfectly balanced that nothing can ever go wrong. Oh god, fucking damn it. Because Rupture received nothing for the last year, people were able to min-max the shit out of it. So in an attempt to move Rupture away from spam blocking, Devyat Rodion came with a new conditional. The 15-3 conditional. If the Rupture stack hit 15 potency and 3 count at the time of activation, whatever skill used lost all Rupture count application. However, in exchange, she would not harm the Rupture stack. This was effectively a gentrified Dimension Shredder. The problem that people quickly found out when they used her was that she has so many coins and just no count. So Devyat Rodion was just useless on a normal Rupture team. If only there was a way to circumvent this. With Talisman Sinclair benched, all you need is her skill 3 and a Gluttony Resonance of 4 to set up a 16-3 Rupture stack on the first turn. But of course, this strategy wasn't perfect. It's still reset heavy, and any unit that has more HP than Devyat Rodion has to be benched, otherwise she wouldn't receive the Talisman. But then some smart individual thought, hey, they can't harm the Rupture stack at 15-3. What if we combine 4 Gluttony Guards and Talisman Sinclair's passive? Can't we kill everything in the game? It's honestly gimmicky. It's like a third-rate Rupture team. Fast forward a week, the new Rupture unit still had the 15-3 conditional, but they just consumed the count. There was no benefit. With every other archetype, gaining coin power for going above a certain amount sounds great. Rupture's true damage. We don't need this. We don't need base damage increases. Look at Fang Hunt Office Fixer Hong Lu. This is the best Rupture 2-star we have ever gotten in so long. And then they neutered him. Unlike the Rupture 3-stars, he doesn't focus on anything else. His coins go from Rupture to nothing. There's nothing. He gains 1 coin power. This is the true damage archetype. What do you... And the worst was yet to pass. A couple weeks later, Devyat Association Sinclair was announced. Because of how identities work in Limbus Company, you can't run 2 of them at the same time, which means Devyat Sinclair has to replace Talisman Sinclair? Anything that replaces infinite Rupture potency has to be absurdly overpowered, right? But on the day of his kit announcement, he inflicts defense level down instead of rupture. Now, defense level down is a weird status effect. It makes the target take 3% more damage per difference between the attacker's offense level and the defender's defense level, which is an increase to damage taken. On the true damage archetype, what are you doing? Like established, this archetype has low damage because, you know, it's about true damage. Getting more base damage increase sounds nice, but more true damage would be better. This is what the whole archetype is about. So why is Devyat Sinclair getting nerfed because of Talisman Sinclair? You can't run them at the same time. Insult to injury, Devyat Sinclair is a copy-paste of Devyat Rodion in every single way, but nerfed in every single way. Devyat Rodion has a conditionless scaling damage multiplier from Courier Trunk on all of her skills, while Devyat Sinclair needs Rupture for that damage multiplier, and doesn't even have it on his other skills. This is a unit that by running, you disable your entire team. Talisman turns Rupture from mediocre to an unstoppable force that has no immovable object to stop it. And Devyat Sinclair offers defense level down, flat damage increase on the true damage team. He was destined to fail. Yet, is he that bad? To make Devyat Sinclair work, you need to make some small adjustments to the standard Rupture team. In my last video, this was what I argued to be the best Rupture team at the time. If you haven't watched it, I mean, you can. It's kind of outdated, but you can. And while you're down there, maybe subscribe. Ooh. To speed things up, Talisman Sinclair has been found dead, Ringsang died of heartbreak in their role as Admirer, Sinking Gregor has taken the place of Rose Spanner Gregor for some fucking reason. Seven Heathcliff and Lantern Dawn are still as good as ever, although Lantern Dawn is probably the next to go. And this is currently the best standard Rupture team comp. Now, how do we build off this to add Devyat Sinclair? Yeah, it's just that simple. But how are you gonna maintain a Rupture stack? With this specific team comp, you can maintain a low potency, high count Rupture stack for 3 turns while Devyat Sinclair ramps up, and then send the potency sky high past the 3rd turn. But wAgent, you might say. You can say this team comp is good, but you made that one mistake about Warp Sang 6 months ago, so all of your credibility is gone. And you play Roblox. Yeah, and you know what? I also play League of Legends. Regardless, Devyat Sinclair, while bad through opportunity cost, is very usable, and I used him in all 4 segments of the railway to get 50 turns. And because I haven't done a thorough job of explaining how to actually play Rupture, I'm gonna walk you through it. The main thing you're looking for is 2 skill 2s from Devyat Sinclair. Then you spend the next 2 turns ramping up while cycling out the bad skills. Devyat Sinclair passively gains 3 Courier Trunk each turn, and after using 2 skill 1s, he is just at the threshold to get 15 Courier Trunk from using his skill 2. Your main goal is to get the count as high as possible on the 2nd turn. Like with this skill hand, Devyat Sinclair gets to ramp up while not harming the stack because of his count neutral skill 1, which is often an overlooked part of his kit. While that turn didn't go perfectly, it still left us in a really good position, 8-4. And because of our last 2 turns ramping up, Devyat Sinclair's skill 2 is now empowered and will inflict 5 potency and 4 count, leaving us at 13-5, which we can easily get above 15-3 with the rest of our team. Specifically because of the railway buffs, Devyat Sinclair is at max sanity and that skill check is free. But now that the Rupture stack is at 15-3, how is Devyat Sinclair useful? Well, my friend, with Talisman Sinclair in the equation, Branch of Knowledge is honestly a dogshit ego, but without it, it is a 12 potency steroid, and a perfect turn 4 consists of Warp Sang's skill 3 and a Branch of Knowledge's heads hit. In 1 turn, we went from 16 potency and 5 count to 42 potency and 6 count. Staggering the portrait and killing the Master's portrait sets up for a massive turn 6. What I would say is the biggest advantage for using Devyat Sinclair is that in multi-segment fights like railways, you get to do this. And that's basically the main strategy of this team. While Devyat Sinclair isn't bad, he requires that you actually know how to play Rupture, and you'd be surprised to learn that's really hard for the average player. But don't worry, Burn is right down the hall.
No way, no way.